Our correspondent in Colombia has spoken to the wife of a man murdered by an armed group, whose testimony reminds us of the work that the government will face if a peace deal is signed with the rebels.
Andrea Vaca was at home with friends September 28, 2013, when two men arrived and gunned down her husband in front of her. Earlier that day, Oscar Javier Molina had been threatened by men while he carried out his job as an outreach worker with vulnerable people in a drug-infested sector of Bogotá, popularly known as the Bronx.
He was killed because he was a community leader and because of the work he was doing with homeless people.
Molina was murdered for attempting to save people from the same drug addiction he escaped more than a decade earlier. His job earned him powerful enemies among the armed groups that control drug trafficking in Bogotá. His killers have never been captured. According to human rights defender Diego Martinez, the ongoing activity of such groups is a key challenge the government must face once peace negotiations with the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia conclude.
The most important thing for the Colombian state is that any post-agreement scenario must involve reducing the level of impunity, which currently exceeds 90%. This allows for armed groups to continue.
For Andrea Vaca, as long as such groups persist, it is too early to talk of peace in Colombia, even in the event of an agreement being signed in Havana.
I think there can be no peace while such groups continue to operate outside the law. They can make peace over there, but what happens here in the city?
So while great strides are being made in the peace talks in Cuba, the government still has a huge job ahead of it to tackle violence in the country. The message here is not intended to detract from Colombia's peace process, but to highlight it as a critical first step towards overcoming a legacy of violence that stretches beyond the parameters of the talks. This is Charles Parkinson, Telesur in Bogotá, Colombia.
And thanks to Charles.